5:47 a.m., January 20th, 2026, Crimea. The ground shakes as 8 experimental RM-48U missiles roar into the sky at Mach 6. Right behind them, a hypersonic Zircon lances through the atmosphere at Mach 9. It is aimed directly at the heart of Ukraine's energy grid. In the Kiev command center, the Patriot radar locks on, yet the signature is a distorted, recycled ghost on the screen. If the PAC-3 interceptors miss, the capital's heating system collapses. But if they fire at a decoy, they waste a $5 million missile on a piece of $5,000 Russian junk. Ukraine is facing a situation so tense that collapse seems imminent. This is not a random strike. It is a cold-blooded tactical algorithm designed to push Ukraine's defense to a breaking point. The opening move is not even missiles. It is a swarm of 20 drone units buzzing toward Kiev and Vinnytsia. They are digital noise designed to force the Patriots' Aegis-linked computers to burn processing power on thousands of junk trajectories. It is the military equivalent of a massive DDoS attack. The goal is to lag the system before the real heavy hitters arrive. The Ukrainians are not being complacent because they understand these decoy tactics all too well. And Russia has proven that. As the radar screens in Kiev flicker with artificial clutter, the second layer of the trap drops. 15 Iskander and S-300 ballistic units scream down from the stratosphere at Mach 7. Each one is a 5-ton kinetic hammer, closing the gap at over 2 kilometers per second. The structural pressure on the defense grid is immense. Every second an operator spends hesitating is another mile of ground lost. But while the Ukrainian crews are sweating over these high-priority threats, the real poison pill is already cruising. 8 experimental RM-48U units are trailing the main wave. To the Russian High Command, this is a masterstroke of budget warfare. They have taken thousands of decommissioned 5V-55 air defense units, hardware that belongs in a museum. They then rootkitted them with cheap, off-the-shelf GLONASS modules. Moscow's logic is cold and corporate. Our recycled junk costs $5,000. Your Western interceptor costs $5 million. It is a ruthless game of return on investment. They are essentially sending Amazon return garbage to force Ukraine to fire away its gold standard PAC-3 supply. In the Kiev command center, the silence is shattered by the scream of Aegis-linked alarms. The operators do not have the luxury of hesitation, as the Iskander and S-300 hammers drop. The Ukrainian Patriot batteries belch fire. The night sky turns into a chaotic theater of kinetic energy. PAC-3MSE interceptors, each a $5 million masterpiece of Western engineering, streak upward to meet the threat. The first contact is a series of blinding flashes. A cluster of Russian Iskanders is vaporized midair, reduced to a rain of glowing titanium confetti. 2 of the RM-48U ghosts are swatted out of the sky by a NASAMS battery. Their primitive guidance systems are no match for the precision of the AIM-120. For a moment, it looks like the defense might hold. If that were all, the defenses in Kiev would certainly hold out. Sadly, Russia thinks so too. So, it is time for the apex predator to emerge. The Zircon. Traveling at Mach 9, it moves so fast that friction turns the surrounding air into a shroud of superheated plasma. To a radar, it is not just a missile anymore. It is a blinding thermal ghost that swallows radio waves, literally hiding behind a wall of fire. Before the first Ukrainian interceptor can even clear the tube, the Zircon impacts a core infrastructure hub in Vinnytsia. The result is an immediate systemic shock. A massive thermal event ripples through the grid, causing an instant loss of load balance. As the lights flicker across the capital, the Russian strategy seems flawless. Saturate the sky with junk, drain the enemy's bank account with decoys, and use the hypersonic spear to pierce the heart of the city. The fire at the Vinnytsia hub is a blinding beacon of the stakes. But for the crews in Kyiv, there is not a single millisecond to mourn. The radar screens are still hemorrhaging data. The second wave of Iskanders is screaming through the terminal phase, and those 8 RM-48U ghosts are still cluttering the engagement zone, mimicking high-value targets. The Ukrainian operators realize they are being baited into a catastrophic financial trap. They are using a gold-plated sledgehammer to swat at flies, and the Patriot inventory is dropping toward a critical threshold. Simultaneously, a tactical pivot is initiated. This is where the Ukrainian Frankensam program enters the fray. Think of it as taking the sophisticated sensors of a modern Western missile and hot wiring them into an old Soviet Buk or S-300 launcher. It is the military version of a custom-built PC designed for one specific task. That task is neutralizing recycled Russian trash without burning through the $5 million PAC-3 supply. These hybrid units begin to engage the RM-48U swarm with ruthless efficiency. The air is filled with the roar of older motors carrying new brains. However, even this creative firmware update has its limits. The sheer volume of the Russian surge is pushing the Delta battlefield management system to its absolute red line. Every intercepted RM-48U is a tactical win. Yet the strategic cost remains staggering. The textbook air defense doctrine is hitting a physical ceiling. The launchers cannot reload fast enough to keep up with the incoming Amazon return missiles. Behind the scenes, the HUR, Ukraine's intelligence directorate, is working at a frantic pace. They are packet sniffing the electronic signatures of the RM-48US based on fragments from a failed Russian test launch. They have identified a specific stutter in the Russian command link. This digital fingerprint allows the Delta system to prioritize real Iskander threats over recycled decoys. It is a desperate race to update the entire national defense grid in real time. Tragically, even with this intelligence, the Zircon remains an unsolved equation. The plasma shroud around the hypersonic spear continues to baffle the tracking sensors. While the Frankensams are successfully vaporizing low-end junk, the high-end Iskanders are still leaking through. Another impact shatters the outskirts of Kiev. The grid is failing, interceptor counts are dwindling, and the Russian swarm shows no signs of fatigue. The question is no longer, can they hit back, but how much longer can they afford to? The smoke from the first interceptions hasn't even cleared when the tactical picture dissolves in the chaos. Suddenly, the radar screens show a blizzard of white noise. Russia has just unleashed the Gerber swarm. These are flying electronic mirrors that saturate frequency bands with high-intensity interference. It is a total DDoS attack of the sky, turning multi-million-dollar Western sensors into expensive blindfolds. Ironically, the recycled RM-48U missiles choose this exact moment to change their behavior. They stop flying in straight lines and begin executing pre-programmed ballistic maneuvers. On the screens, they now look identical to high-value Iskander missiles. The Ukrainian operators are trapped in a lethal guessing game. Ignore the signal and risk a direct hit, or fire a $5 million interceptor at $5,000 of junk? Under the cover of this electronic fog, the inevitable happens. A real Iskander M, hidden behind the Gerber clutter, slips through a gap in the defensive bubble. It impacts a critical distribution hub on the outskirts of the capital. The kinetic energy release is massive, shattering the structural integrity of the local grid. In an instant, a cascading systemic failure ripples through the heart of Kiev. Lights out. Back in the command bunkers of Crimea, the Russian generals are practically celebrating the ROI. To them, this is a corporate victory. They see the frantic activity of the Ukrainian batteries and believe they are trading cheap noise for Ukraine's strategic survival. But amidst this darkness, the hunters are becoming the hunted. While active Western radars are blinded by noise, Ukraine's silent sentinels, the Kolchuga M passive sensors, are perfectly calm. They do not broadcast, they only listen. The Russian S-400 batteries are currently illuminating the airspace to guide the recycled missiles. They are essentially shouting their exact GPS coordinates into the night sky. It is like a thief using a high-powered torch in a dark room. It helps them see, but it tells everyone exactly where they are standing. Every pulse of that S-400 radar is now being triangulated in real time. The Russian commanders are laughing at Ukraine's dwindling ammo, unaware that their own electronic arrogance has painted a target on their foreheads. A young Ukrainian operator taps a final sequence into the Delta system. He looks at his commander and nods. It is time to flip the script. While the world thinks Ukraine is drowning in a digital blizzard, they are actually preparing a signature flip. The genius of it is that those recycled RM-48U missiles are too primitive to find a target on their own. The Russian S-400 batteries in Crimea are forced to stay on the air, constantly shouting guidance corrections. To the Kolchuga M passive sensors, that radar signal is not a threat. It is a homing beacon. Ukraine has integrated Western ELINT software to flip the emission. They are no longer shooting at the missiles. They are using the missiles as a free GPS service provided by the Kremlin. The irony is staggering. Moscow thought they were sending a lethal message, but they were broadcasting their own home address. It is like sending a fleet of bombers, but accidentally including a FedEx tracking number. And Ukraine is about to deliver a return to sender package that Moscow didn't order. Suddenly, 15 miles off the Crimean coast, the silence of a hidden cove is shattered. Ukrainian Special Operations Forces, SOF, activate their pre-positioned swarm. These are customized beaver loitering munitions. They are not flying high where the S-400 can see them. They are hugging the waves, using AI-driven terrain masking to stay below the radar horizon of the Pantsir and Tor systems. Inside the S-400 control cabins in Crimea, the Russian crews are still celebrating their perceived success. They see the blackouts in Kiev and assume the battle is won. Keep the signal strong, the Russian commander orders, wanting to guide the last wave of RM-48U home. He has no idea that every pulse of his radar is pulling a swarm of AI-guided hunters directly toward him. On the Ukrainian side, the atmosphere shifts to cold, calculated focus. The operator in Kyiv watches the beaver drones as they thread the needle through coastal defenses. They gave us the coordinates for free, he whispers with a grim smile. Ukraine has turned Russia's budget warfare into a 1 trillion-to-1 tactical blunder. The trash sent to freeze Kiev is now the very thing that is going to set Crimea on fire. The package is 30 seconds from the doorstep, and the Russian generals are about to find out there is no refuse delivery option. The sky over the Black Sea becomes a graveyard of high-velocity physics. The Ukrainian munitions finally breach the inner sanctum of Crimea's coastal defense. By the time the Russian Pantsir S-1 crews realize the threat is not a radar ghost, it is almost too late. Alarms scream in the cramped cabins near Yevpatoria. Panic sets in as the Russian operators realize their prestige S-400 system has been turned into a target by its own signal. The Pantsir units open fire in a desperate last-ditch effort. The 30mm cannons spit out a wall of lead tracers into the pre-dawn mist. It sounds like a mechanical, rhythmic hammering on a massive scale. But these are not the drones from 2 years ago. Every time a Russian radar locks on, the Beaver's onboard AI calculates a countermaneuver in less than 50 milliseconds. The drones twitch and bank with an agility that defies human reaction time. Then, the impact. A Beaver drone slams directly into the heart of an S-400 transporter erector launcher. A massive secondary explosion occurs as the S-400's own missiles ignite in their tubes. In the Russian command center, the laughter has died. The generals stare at their monitors in stunned silence as the Black Sea Gate develops a billion-dollar hole. The defensive umbrella they spent years building is now porous, and the panic is palpable. How did they get through? A Russian officer shouts. But the only answer is the crackle of fire from the wreckage. Yet the victory is far from total. In the Kyiv bunker, the mood is one of exhausted tension. They have lost several advanced loitering munitions, and the energy grid is bleeding. This is the ultimate deadlock. Russia still has launchers in reserve and could initiate a second wave at any moment. Ukraine has punctured the shield, but they are nearly out of interceptors. Both sides are standing on the edge of a tactical abyss. The sun rises over scarred Crimea, and it is time to look at the receipt. This was not a clean victory. It was a brutal exchange of high-tech capital. The Kremlin is staring at a $400 million hole in its budget. 2 S-400 launchers near Yevpatoria are now just smoldering piles of titanium scrap. Worse, their Nebo radar, the eyes of the Black Sea, has been neutralized. Ukraine swatted 7 out of 8 RM-48U missiles, but the cost was high. They burned through a significant inventory of Frankensam and NASAMS interceptors. Russia's Black Sea Gate is no longer a shield. It is Swiss cheese. However, the cost to Ukraine is visible from space. The Zircon impact has triggered a massive systemic energy imbalance. The grid is alive, but it is on life support. The new tech propaganda has evaporated. Moscow tried to rebrand 40-year-old junk as a game changer, but they accidentally turned their launchers into a delivery point for Ukrainian drones. Ukraine has proven a simple, lethal truth. It doesn't matter what GPS module Russia sticks on its recycled trash. the fate remains the same. This battle has forced Russia to make a painful choice. They are already pulling remaining S-400 units back to the Russian interior. There is no total winner here. Russia remains a persistent headache, and Ukraine is still fighting for every kilowatt. The lesson? New tech, same fate. Russia tries to recycle, Ukraine just vaporizes. If you want to see more tactical plot twists, hit that like and subscribe button. Bye for now.